few minutes to introduce our guests. They will then fill out and give a more detailed explanation or introduction of themselves. But Dr. Schlatterer, Joerg Schlatterer, and the ACS, I know Joerg and I overlap with the NSF in the Division of Grad Education to the GRSP Fellowship. That's how I know Joerg and our common passion with grad education. And Joerg did his PhD in Germany, in Heidelberg. And I always thought he was a physical chemist, but he told me that no, he was a biochemist. And then he came to the US for his postdoctoral fellowship, went to Florida State, worked at the high magnetic resonance laboratory that some of us are familiar with, right? And then went to Columbia School of Medicine, where he was very involved with the postdoctoral students and international experience for graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. We were also active in the postdoctoral association. So that's how I know when he came to, I remember when he came to interview at the NSF. I was on the other side. And anyway, now he, after finishing at NSF, he's been with the American Chemical Society, working on his passion, professional development for our students and postdocs, and we're happy to have him join us today. Accompanying him is Corrie Kuniyoshi, also a chemist. Both of you have different ACS, and he got a PhD at UCLA, and one of the PhD students who decided that she didn't really want to be a faculty member. This is the career. We are telling people that there are a lot of other options. Went to the American Chemical Society. He's been active with ACS, and also in addition, shared the passion with us on professional development of students and alternative careers for graduate students, and developed the Chem IDP, a takeoff on the IDP that many of us are familiar with. So he's the author of the Chem IDP, has been with ACS for 10 years or something now. So we're very pleased to have you join us here today and talk to us about the IDP.
Thank you so much, Krishna, for the lovely introduction, and I'm impressed. Your memory is really outstanding. Indeed, we could basically save our self-introductions, but before we dig into the actual topics, it's fantastic to see that on the Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m., a number of faculty members and students are interested in that topic, individual development plan is systematic. When you developed that title, I thought, Corrie, well, you might want to call it just I am. Right? Corrie didn't like that idea, and some of you don't like it either. But actually, it goes really to the heart of individual development. Right? Like, the user is really responsible for driving their treatment. It's not the responsibility of anyone else, not of the faculty advisor or institution. They could provide a framework which allows the user to develop professionally. But actually, the student, the IDP user, is the only person who is responsible for this progress. We have a very small group today. Very likely it will be very interactive, and we will have a lot of discussions around the tables. Don't be afraid, we will not lecture at all. We are all probably relatively new in the field of individual development plans, and we have to work together to really leverage those skills to make them really work in the academic context. And I think I will be in charge of advancing the slides. Oops.
So as Joerg was saying, we really wanted to make this interactive, and part of our goal is to also get your feedback. You are the experts in many of the things that we're working on. So we're going to start with this first activity. What is the role of faculty advisors in the mentoring process in higher education? Think about that for just a minute and share the person next to you. to answer this question. And then we're going to come back quickly. You might think compare and share. So just
So basically, it's a Okay, he's
okay, anyone willing to share?
Well, we were talking about a faculty advisor versus mentoring in general, and maybe being an advisor has a lot of supervisory aspects to it. Although the word doesn't necessarily mean that, but what we often do by advisors is supervising. But mentoring has the aspect of outside of the day-to-day activities or outside of the formal activities. There's being concerned with what their long-term goals might be and making sure they can ask questions about what they should be adding into their experience while they're doing the other things that are more prescriptive.
There's that separation, the clear difference between mentor and advisor goals. And the consistency.
I think so. Maybe not. Just depends. I think they're just the advisors, which I think that for me is teaching them how to do research and experiment of input data, and etc. Like that. That is the teaching of how to do research. They're very good at that, but they really are not comfortable to picking the whole, talking to the whole person, how's the rest of your life, what you want to do. That's really your job. You figure it out, but I will pick it up. So I think for some days around, they'll pick it up together. It's possible, but not necessarily.
Anyone have additional insights or feelings about what was just said?
For me, I feel on the whole, I was thinking it more holistically about the research advising and that these roles to navigate the professional role. Right away, more for the mentoring side, not so much the nitty-gritty of the research side. It's just echoes the same thing. Maybe they're together, maybe they're separate. Maybe it depends on the person or the relationship.
Because sometimes the advisor is evaluated because you are evaluating that person periodically. When you're wearing that hat for the student, for them considering you a mentor, they are very comfortable.
I see it kind of like when the advisor can anticipate obstacles and help the student navigate really more easily. Because we've seen a lot of it before, so we're still learning at the same time, so it's reciprocal. So we think maybe terminology-wise that it's one direction, but we're constantly learning from the student, from the experience, how we could be a better mentor and advisor in the future. If you look back and you think, I can't believe I didn't help more at that point, or I didn't see their weakness at that point, and I could have maybe done more initiative to get them the skills. But I think it's a learning process for everybody involved.
It's really wonderful to listen to your thoughts and ideas in that space. But our purpose to be here is really to refresh your memory about American Chemical Society, what we are. We will share a little bit what we think about individual development plans, what we developed over the years, and how it intersects with the mentoring process. And as Corey mentioned, the third item is really we would love to learn from the community what we could do in that space as a scientific society. What is our role as seen by faculty members, by students at academic institutions? And we really rely on the feedback from the community to develop appropriate tools and training.
So, just briefly, the American Chemical Society is the world's largest scientific society. We have more than 150,000 members. We were started by Congress many, many decades ago. And the vision of the American Chemical Society is to improve people's lives through the transforming power of chemistry. So Corey and I are actually part of the education division of the American Chemical Society. And the education division is located in the top floor of this wonderful building, which you will find in DC, M Street and 16th Street, just down the road from the White House. So whenever you are in DC, let us know, shoot us an email, we would be happy to welcome you at that building. Overall, but many people know that, ACS employs 1,600 people, and about 600 of those are actually in the C1000 in Columbus, Ohio. The education division has one office dedicated to graduate and postdoctoral education, which, and Corey and I, we work in that office. Our mission is to develop and to provide high-quality career and professional development resources for graduate students and postdocs, and also to help facilitate community building amongst those populations in the chemical sciences. We do not work in a vacuum. We have to interact with a lot of people in the community. We work with a graduate education advisory board. We have a lot of faculty members from that advisory board, grad students, postdocs. We work with representatives of those different stakeholders groups to formulate reports. The last big report was issued in 2012, named Advancing Graduate Education in the Chemical Sciences, which concludes, well, graduate students need help with the preparation for their careers after graduate school. In 2013, we issued a survey, and the finding of this graduate student survey is that, again, that graduate students need help. Therefore, we consistently improved our offerings to offer help actually to graduate students and postdocs. And the ultimate goal is to allow students to discover their personal career sweet spot. And just as a reminder, the career sweet spot is directly at the intersection where the personal values, the personal strengths, and the job market opportunities overlap. That we call career sweet spot. In order to get every ACS member or any individual involved in the chemical sciences directly there, we are offering a whole portfolio of activities, including we publish a magazine called the Graduate and Postdoctoral Chemist Magazine. We organize career workshops. We organize webinars. We just launched a pilot called Catalyzing Career Networking, which happens during the ACS national meetings. And just recently, we got NSF funding to build a bridge project to broaden participation in graduate education. One part of our large portfolio is actually an individual development plan for chemists. Just to remind you, the Office of Personnel Management defines an individual development plan as a tool that assists in career personnel development. Its primary purpose is to help raise short-term and long-term career goals as well as improve current job performance.
So,
With this next activity, we want you to think about what is the purpose of mentoring graduates. So think about that for just a few seconds and then share with your partner. Okay, so if we can, so there'll be 15 to get no problem. And start to fill out. No problem. So, could I use a couple of responses? All right. I just did the purpose of mentoring graduates is just to guide them. So, and that was kind of a previous guide of professionalism and lab work and all of the activities. For the second part, if you elaborate within the lab work, fun in all aspects of both their career, their lab work, published papers,
Could also be an encourager when they hit those rough spots. We try to help them to see that they have the skills to get past it, move on. Sometimes it takes them past the really difficult periods that we all face.
support structure.
I find a lot of analogies here. Ideally, there's a relationship, somewhat of a passing on. I think the experience of those me or my academic advisors passing on a blessing to the others so they can become successful, productive, and mutual satisfaction on that. It's even selfless. Hard to decouple that. But that's part of the richness of humans. We develop these relationships and satisfaction and success. Holding each other's hands when we have failures.
It is like that, right? That's why we say we would give them a trial and grand trial. You know, but like just like parents would face that roommate back sometimes because we do find that I think I design an experiment, I have to think of it like my advisors and even though that as well. So they are as an advisor, as a mentor, you're really shaping how you think of chemistry, which is for me part of life. So it's how, and I've seen us some of my students babysit. You find that this became clear to me was one of my students' one of my students teaches of chemistry in Dollar Bay. The students came here as an undergrad student. And I was teaching recitation at the time. And that person said, "Oh, your student Kim teaches just like you." Oh my God. So, and each lab student is different. It's like with kids, we can't really employ the same methods. So it's really for me launching their careers, not just teaching them to be the researchers, but helping them launch their careers.
Does,
Part of it.
does mentoring have to be purposeful? I ask that because when I think of the graduate students who I would say I mentored, this is not advised, mentored, it was because they expressed an interest in being mentored. And so it wasn't as if I went to them and said, here is my wisdom. These are the things you should do. It was that they came to me with, I want to be here, and I'm here, and I recognize that there's some, perhaps you can help me with this path. So it was there was a mutuality to it. It wasn't just, you're my student, I'm going to mentor you. I will advise you. There's a managerial aspect of it. I will do that. The mentorship, I wonder if there has to be a purpose to it. Sure, when you're mentoring someone, there is a purpose to it. You're helping them as a guide, but you decide you're going to mentor someone.
I think whether you decide or not, a lot of it's passive. I would try to influence you.
Yeah.
Good question. And I think that a little bit further we'll kind of focus on that question as well. So potentially that.
If you browse a lot of the reports which were published throughout the last years, you will see the return to mentoring is critical for the graduate student experience. And some of the reports by the Council of Graduate Schools or the National Academy of Sciences point out that besides providing academic rigor, institutions are responsible for providing professional development. In order to allow them therefore a variety of different careers, take into consideration that the career is probably more interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary than they were a couple of years ago, or decades ago. It's more collaborative and more international. So there are other reports out there, not other reports, but other statements which I just want to show quickly. Unlike those individuals who graduated maybe 30 years ago, 20 years ago, if you graduate today, you have to be prepared to adopt a large number of different jobs throughout it. That is an incredible challenge compared to the scenario which you have faced a couple of years ago. And also, you have to recognize that a PhD prepares you for a PhD in the STEM field, prepares you to succeed in non-STEM fields as a professional. One interesting quote from the recent National Academy of Science report is that throughout the process to educate graduate students, there must be something implemented which helps good faculty advisors who serve as mentors to be recognized. How are good mentoring practices, or best mentoring practices, incentivized on campus, but also through potential funding agencies? There's so much food for thought in those recent reports. It's hard to pick just a couple of quotes, but we attempted to show you the breadth of different nuggets which you could draw out of these reports.
Interestingly, the National Academy of Science report that I just quoted also described a set of core competencies. It's the first written report that defines core competencies for master's and PhD level graduate students, including the core competencies they call communication. You know, communication could be improved throughout your life. You're never perfect communicators. Project management, budget management, teaching, mentorship, entrepreneurship, intercultural teamwork skills. All those competencies are acquired throughout the career as a graduate student, or should be acquired throughout your career as a graduate student. And it's the responsibility of the academic institution to make sure that everyone is aware that they receive those competencies throughout the graduate school experience and that they could put those competencies to work, regardless in which field they find employment and develop a career.
So regarding individual development plans, as many of you know, they're not a new thing. Industry has been using it for many years. But here are some of the national initiatives that really led to ACS creating an individual development plan. And kind of shows you the timeline of different IDPs that are out there. Many of you are familiar with AAAS's and UCSF's My IDP that was in 2012. And then one of the really important things that came out that really encouraged the faculty to look at what individual development plans were and how to use them with their students was that in 2014, or right before 2014, NIH began requiring grantees to report on the use of IDPs for their supported graduate students and postdocs. So that was a really big shift and change for faculty. I will talk a little bit about how ACS received the NSFI core grants later on and how we use that to really probe why should ACS develop an IDP and should be developed and what needed to go into an IDP in order to be effective. ACS launched ChemIDP in 2016. And for those of you that do come in contact with humanities and social science, the Graduate Career Consortium launched Imagine PhD. All of these tools, these different tools that exist there, are there to help the graduate students and they're there to help faculty in the mentoring process. So in this next activity, we'd like you to share with a colleague, how have you personally used individual development plans or other structured career mentoring tools?
We would like to focus on the personal experience, right? Not working with graduate students, but how have you personally
So the other part of this question is that we use the IDP terminology, but are there other structured mentoring tools that we use when you're advising guidance?
I can't say that I use them for graduate students, but our learning office on campus has a mentoring tool that we use for business term, where it talks about the goals for the year and what you want to accomplish and lays out a plan for that. That's one structured tool that we use for personal development. How is advising graduate students with new tools?
See that since 2012, I used IDP. The first one was the one from New York. That was the one. It was really long, and my student asked them to fill it out, and so it was different talk. And know, complaining that it took forever and it asked questions that were not relevant or things like that. So, but it was useful because it made them think about it. But then more about the ATEC, the IDP that was developed on campus here from the tool we now use, and how that worked and how that succeeded from the evaluation and all of that stuff.
I've never used it.
You don't use it for the vaccine. Director. So, yeah, that's great.
For our pilot with the IDP on our campus, the faculty said it was very helpful, mostly because it provided a structured way to advise students and sort of a chronological way. So kind of things that we focus on at different points in graduate students' career, rather than just sort of everything at once or too many things too soon or that sort of thing. So in our small pilot, it was well received. And what we've done this year to advertise it, it was the articles and it will be with some different
I was very surprised. And when I started working with NSF, I thought, well, I was working with the program director and that's it. But HR said, well, here's an individual development plan that you use for your personal development. And I felt, oh my God, it's burden. I have to take time. And who knows that if I have actually time to do that, what I propose to, that's cool. So what I felt, for sure it was helpful to have an idea of how I would like to develop, but do I actually have time to fill it out and time to follow through with those brilliant ideas which I wrote for the week like that. And so personally, I believe they can work and they will work as long as there's time.
Well, for me personally, NSF was the first place where I was asked to fill out, and we have to meet with a supervisor and say, every 6 months, right?
Yeah.
We meet every 6 months and say, and have this conversation. And the first time he asked me to do it, I said, oh my God, I'm so fast. I really told me. I'm not thinking of where I want to go next. I feel a little irritated that I have to sit with Val and talk about this. I remember that feeling. Like, oh, careful. I found that very useful because of how the conversation with my supervisor. So, what do you want to do with this? Where do you want to go? Depending on where you want to go, we can create a project for you where you can take, you can learn some of those things and take it to where you want. So my first conversation was thinking where I want to go. I want to go back to the same thing is what I'm thinking and everything. But that conversation led me to going to the HBCUs, trips that I made for diversity of people. So it was the first time I felt I actually had a mentor. I thought we could say, what do you want to get out of this and where do you want to go next? Which I had not thought about before. So I found that even something and then the real first time I'm like, 2 years ago I found this form. I found this form from like a graduate student program at where they had this new form. And the students fill out what are your goals, how is your mentor helping you with these goals, and how can your mentor help you know. And I've had my students fill out this time. It's exactly what you're saying. It's just a great conversation starter, but it also makes them think because then they have to think about what their goals are because a lot of people don't sit down and talk. We all know each other. Just to take a minute here, we all know each other, I think. I don't know if you know who all of us are here.
That's true. So we got to know some of you earlier today, but it would be maybe very helpful
And just so you know,
to
and then
make a very
responding
quick
when
round
they
of
come
introduction.
from.
Yeah, maybe we start here.
So basically, I'm Komal from India, and I've taken admission this fall itself.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm busy with my courses right now. I'm not selected all of these things. So I'll be basically working with the dance. Hope so.
Wonderful.
Everything works out good.
Very good.
Karen, how I'm an associate professional in
Will Mitchell, I'm a professor in physics and also associate dean at graduate school.
I'm Jason, income chair and finance.
We both an associate dean in school of business and economics.
I'm Craig Friedrich, associate chair and graduate director of mechanical engineering.
So I showed you a little while ago about the national initiative that led to the IDP. And here's ACS's own timeline for the development of our IDP, which is the MIDP. And probably some of these reports you already talked about before, but the one thing I want to focus on is what we did right before we developed, which was that we received an NSF I-4 and what that gave us to do was funding so that we could interview different faculty that we knew about that were using IDP or IDP type processes, graduate students, career services directors, people in the field of career development that have been mentoring graduate students and postdocs, because we wanted to see what's needed to go into creating a very viable IDP that would be useful to graduate students and postdocs. So we had all of these interviews, and we had the career sweet spot that Joerg spoke about, where we knew that in order for the graduate students to find their career sweet spot, they would need to overlap with their personal strengths, values, and the job market opportunities. And ACS had a number of resources and contacts over the year. All of this information, all three of these basic things, went into creating what is now the IDP. The process was created for the IDP. And this is how we came up with the 4 core components. And really, you can see these 4 things in just about all IDPs that exist. Sometimes they're just named something different. The ability to self-assess, explore different careers. One of the things that was really important to us was to have an ability for the user to go in and look at different career options that were available outside of just academia and industry, looking at nonprofit jobs, looking at entrepreneurships, etc. Skill strengthening, to actually go into the tool and get ideas for different skills they want to strengthen, such as communication, networking, business management, and the ability to set goals. And this inherently creates what we have as the IDP. This is what it looks like online. It's going to look very different next month, but it's still going to have the same basic framework focusing on these 4 elements. This is an open website, so it's absolutely free and accessible to anybody, regardless of whether they have membership.
How is the CAM-IDP significantly different from other things? It seems to me that 99% of everything is common across all PhDs.
The main way that it's different is that we built it with chemical scientists in mind. It does have pieces like the self-assessment that are relevant to everybody that is either a master's or PhD candidate. But there's specific elements like the Explore Career section. It's not just a plethora of careers. It has examples of people that have chemical sciences degrees that actually went into these fields. And so the specificity is really built into the exploring the different types of career paths. Skill strengthening, because a lot of the resources that are comes into bear have to do with those resources that are applicable to clinical sciences. And also assessor staff, because they can actually put in their specific technical skills in the software. Great question. Success factors for IDP use. This is what we've learned from different people that have used IDP and what we're learning as we're delivering workshops and bringing the IDP out to the community. If they just go on and take the online tool, almost nothing is going to work, right? That's not very useful. But these three things make it very relevant and pertinent to the graduate student and effective. It's often an iterative process, so it's not something that you could just like tap into and feel you have your career plan. You know, we often stress sense of agency. We need the graduate student to have ownership of their career, which I think touches a bit on what Bill had said before. So in that sense, the graduate student would come to you as and ask you for that mentor, you know, give them some advice, some mentoring. They would take ownership of it. They just wouldn't wait for someone to tell them what to do. And then this third most important thing is the interpersonal interactions, because we learned from the career services directors and the faculty that, and the students, that every meaningful career development thing that they've ever done, the most meaningful thing, always had an interpersonal interaction, whether it was sitting one-on-one with their mentor or talking to someone that they heard on a panel session. Very effective.
So we developed this wonderful tool, and the Graduate Education Advisory Board said, oh, that's fantastic, but how do you actually integrate that into the mentoring? And brainstormed, so what could we do in that space? And one of the simple ideas came up in one of the Graduate Education Advisory Board meetings. Well, why do you not just bring simple guidelines for best practices during a mentoring activity? So we crafted a 2-page postcard format, which we'll pass out. And you will notice actually that a couple of those items here on this postcard refer to basic principles of individual development. For example, on the quick guide for a formal mentoring meeting, we say, well, you have to set clear and measurable goals, referring to the SMART goals, which are alluded to in the MIP. Review the individual development plan or any kind of career plan. Very often those career plans are called career action plans instead of individual development plans. You also, as a mentor, should be able to provide some kind of resources. So the ChemIDP provides online resources, but for sure there are other resources on the campus. Right here at Michigan Tech, we have such a plethora of different fantastic career professional development resources students have to take advantage of to make their career work. On the other hand, behaviors for mentoring success, I just want to point out 2 things. Again, goal setting and measure progress towards those goals and to be willing to adapt. These are the take-home messages which are clearly connected to individual development plans. So when we printed those postcards, we were quite skeptical. We printed maybe 200 because we thought, oh, okay, the advisory board said we should print it, and we put all of our brain into this, into the postcard. But we were surprised. A lot of departments said, oh, but just send us maybe 100 or maybe 200. So yes, we are happy to send those out to departments to start a discussion on the mentor-mentee topic. If you want to have some, we have some here, or we could send it to Pushpa or to Deb as well. So the Graduate Education Advisory Board also recommended, well, you focus on graduate students and postdocs. What's next in the pipeline using the IDP, the MIDP? And one thing what we will do over the next year is to extend it to undergraduate students, giving them clear guidance on how to get into graduate school, how to get into other careers where you could utilize your undergraduate degree, but also potentially how to get into medical school, because a lot of students with an undergraduate degree in chemical sciences actually want to go to medical school, and I think it's our responsibility to give them guidance there as well. But thinking ahead, well, mid-career chemists, as Pushpa indicated, we can benefit from individual development plans as well. So we will start brainstorming with mid-career chemists how we could utilize that tool for that target group. And I wouldn't exclude that in 5-6 years we will include a portion for maybe retired chemists to help them to find fulfilling activities in retirement, how to give back and maybe to continue to work in the chemical science field in one way or another. I think that's very often a neglected group and a neglected resource. So we have 5-6 minutes left, but we suggest to read the case study which we wrote, and you will notice that we have one scenario which is once perceived by the mentor and on the other hand perceived by the student. And on the second page we have a number of questions, and probably after reading that we will maybe be able to tackle one of the questions. One question.
Number 5.
We will try to tackle question number 5. What should be the responsibility of the student?
Don't laugh. Don't laugh.
I think I have this here in my office.
Uh-oh. Haven't we all?
So the responsibility of the student, I guess I'm approaching this from the perspective of if I was the other faculty member, what would I tell the student how they should approach the situation? And I think the first thing I would say is understand what you want. You know, you want to discuss the situation, but I maybe don't go in and ask the question directly, but my advice has always been ask for what you want. And so To do that, you need to know what your goal is for this meeting. What are we trying to accomplish? And I think the responsibility of the student is, what am I trying to accomplish with this meeting? Do I want my advisor to say, yeah, you can graduate now? So know what you're asking for.
Maybe the students have almost waited too long to have this conversation. Should have completed the IDP and thought about what they wanted to do with the 4 to 6 years. But on the other hand, it's not an uncommon situation. No, I don't understand that. So saying today, yesterday, they have the student. So, so to some extent, it is also the responsibility of the faculty after the third year, when they become a candidate, and they finish all their qualifying exams, and they achieve candidacy to say, okay, you should be thinking of completing in the next year or two. What are you thinking of? You should start applying a year ahead of time. So to start that conversation, because sometimes for students it is hard to initiate that conversation because of our differential or there's the it's just a fear. Yeah, when should one have this conversation that when am I going to finish? I want to leave. I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so sometimes faculty have to say, yes, that's your responsibility to think about that as well. So I think
I think it definitely goes both ways. I mean, I feel like the student in this scenario, for instance, about the student has the responsibility to try and clarify what the expectations of the advisor are, and try and get the committee together to make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of what work needs to be doing. But I think it's also the student's responsibility to do some self-reflection on what they want to do with their career. Walking to their advisor's office saying, well, I don't think I want to be a class professor, but maybe I'll do, like, that's not going to be productive or helpful either. But I think there are, unfortunately, more students in there.
And to be honest, this was actually a composite of different graduate students we had talked with structures. And one of the questions that we have for you then is the push process. Would it be effective for the graduate students, these types of graduate students, to use individual development plans?
I think it would maybe help. My perspective, I an advisor's PhD student who talk about things, and I don't know exactly what they're doing. Normally, when a student wants to talk to me, I ask them, what's the goal? But I know students and advisors, and certain students are maybe don't have the best relationship, and I don't ask that. And so, but I think in this case, if I'm that committee member, certainly I would ask, what is your goal of meeting with me? And me and you will have an agenda that is sort of focused. And that makes the student reflect a little bit about what do I expect from that. So even though that's not an IEP, it's sort of an activity, sort of reflection.
Yeah.
What's the goal of this meeting, or am I just going to vent? And sometimes students do that, and you just sit there and listen, and as they vent and they feel better, they walk out. So I think the student in this case, the responsibility is, if they talk with other community members, to make sure that community member understands why I want to talk with that community.
What I want to accomplish.
So we are what we something doing from the grad school was students who really been here 6, 7 years, we started with 7 years. I sent an email out to the students as well as to the advisor and said, you realize you've finished 7 years. And therefore, when you expect to finish, this was to form hopefully that conversation, because we have a limit, you have to finish after 8 years, otherwise you have to ask permission to continue as a PhD student. So this was backing off from there and saying, this is to give you permission to talk to your advisor, saying the grad school is bugging me about when I'm going to finish the PhD, so and master's too. So that was the point. Yeah, that's
One of the questions that we have gotten asked often is, do IDPs work? And if so, what does it mean to work? Right? Because there's going to be different definitions given, basically from the faculty and from the students. So we have ACS recently received the impact indicators and instruments for individual development plans. The main goal is to start to create measurements to measure IDP efficacy throughout time. So the main goal is to recommend strategies for building a base of evidence on how and why IDP processes work in various contexts. You have your own IDP, there's my IDP, there's different IDPs out there with institutions. So this is the work moving forward, so that even though we have anecdotal evidence that shows that IDPs can be effective and work, we want research-based work to be done.
So that brings us basically to the end. And to conclude, I would like to just say clinical development plans have the potential to be effective tools in graduate education. Research has been done to prove it. Numerous reports really indicate that further investments have to be made into the preparation for graduate students and postdocs. And one of the investments resulted in thematic lead. And most importantly, ACS cannot solve it alone. Michigan Tech cannot solve that problem. That problem alone, how to provide best mentoring to their students. The whole community has to work together to figure out what are the commonalities, which resources would be the best to help educate mentors to fulfill their mentoring job, advisors to become better mentors, but most importantly to work with the students to really give them the sense of ownership of their own future, making sure they understand that regardless of which resources they are the drivers. Only they are responsible for their success. With that, Krishna, thank you so much, Deborah, for having us here on the lovely campus. It was great meeting fantastic students and faculty members, and I know we will continue our conversation in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much.